The United States carried out a third consecutive night of strikes on targets across Iran as the fight over the Strait of Hormuz intensifies. The latest round of attacks came just hours after President Trump said he would reinstate the naval blockade of ships traveling to and from Iranian ports in the key waterway. The president also suggested the U.S. will, quote, become the guardian of the strait for a fee equal to 20% of the value of a ship's cargo. That comes despite his administration previously insisting there should be no fees in this waterway, upending centuries of U.S. support for global freedom of navigation.
It's an international waterway. No country is allowed to charge tolls or fees on an international waterway. That's existing international law. That's the way it is.
Rubio reminding of that prior precedent just a few weeks ago there. Now, all of this is sending global oil prices surging early today to a one-month high. Iran, meanwhile, is hitting back with attacks targeting U.S. military sites in Kuwait, Bahrain, and Jordan, as well as 2 UAE tankers in the Strait of Hormuz, killing 1 crew member. The UAE has threatened to retaliate, again raising the possibility of a return to a wider war. And, of course, President Trump was asked yesterday if this is just simply the new status quo. That's what he said.
Mr. President, you noted the United States is bombing Iran again. I mean, you've been bombing Iran for months now. Is this just the new normal for the American people?
Well, you know, we're in Vietnam for 19 years. We're here for 4 months. So I think we've done a lot. We've knocked out their Navy in a period of 1 month. We knocked out their Air Force. Their Air Force is non-existent. We knocked out most of their missiles, most of their drones. We knocked out their drone manufacturing capability, about 92%. Their missile capability for manufacturing, we knocked out 89%. And they have a little capability, but they don't have any capability for us. This is almost a military skirmish. Now, with all of that being said, you have to get people that want to make something. We had a deal with them 2 days ago, and then they said, oh, we can't make that deal. We have to negotiate it further. And this is what they've done for 47 years. The difference is nobody negotiated like I do. And this should have been done by Bush and Obama and Biden and people before them.
So while we await some new clarity on if this is just the status quo, the Hill did get some clarity, because we're now learning that President Trump formally notified Congress on Friday that the U.S. resumed military action against Iran last week. This is in a letter sent to Congress where the president wrote that he directed the military to strike Iran after the country attacked neutral commercial vessels in the Strait of Hormuz, despite that standing memorandum of understanding between the two countries. That notification is in accordance with the War Powers Act, which requires the president to tell lawmakers of any military attacks within 48 hours. But it also puts Congress on the clock, because they now have 60 days to decide whether to authorize the military action or require it to end. In that same letter, Trump wrote that U.S. ground forces are not involved in the strikes and that any attacks are, quote, planned and executed in a manner designed to minimize civilian casualties. The president went on to write that U.S. actions are focused on, quote, advancing U.S. national interests, securing safe passage of commercial vessels through the Strait of Hormuz, and defending our regional allies and partners. Here on set with me, White House reporter for Reuters, Bo Erickson. Bo, a lot for us to get into here, because they're notifying the Hill, which I think is notable in that it puts us back on that 60-day clock. But the administration and, frankly, Republican senators on the Hill have always drawn this distinction between, well, if it's just airstrikes, we're going to let the White House kind of have a bunch of leeway here. But if it escalates to more than that, then we want to be involved. What is the White House view on where things go next from that perspective?
Yeah, it's kind of this interesting question right now, because in the last few weeks, one person has kind of explained it to me. There's been kind of a hot piece going on around the Strait of Hormuz in Iran, because to lay people maybe outside of Washington, they're seeing these military strikes, these in the air, and people are saying, I thought there was a truce. And that doesn't really seem like the word truce to me. So they are trying to kind of bridge kind of two opposing ideas here. They're trying to follow the legal letter of the law when it comes to Congress. They're trying not to have any more Republicans push back on them. But at the same time, they're acknowledging kind of some of the growing problems that are restarting here. Overnight, actually, a lot happened. And yesterday, we saw that President Trump said that the Strait of Hormuz was going to be open. But my Reuters colleagues overnight noted that it was the fewest number of tanker ships got through that strait yesterday since May.
And I think the open question that we started the show with is the economic toll on Americans, price at the pump, and other impacts. has really been one of the drivers for the White House to end this conflict. It certainly is not over in as short a period as the president said it would be when it first started many months ago. But does this force them back to the negotiating table? And is it just another reminder of the leverage that Iran does have in this situation?
Yeah, this is actually day 108 of this conflict. And this was supposed to be about a 4 to 8 week mission altogether, is what we were originally told. It is that price of gas, though. And the price of gas has been coming down in recent weeks. And voters were saying that. But at a new Reuters poll just in the last few days, they were saying that Americans, 79% think that this U.S. military involvement in Iran will go on for an extended period of time. And more than 60% of poll respondents said that they think this will push that gas prices up even higher. We are getting closer to the midterms, day by day by day. Yeah. And this is something that voters can see on their drive to work every morning, this price of gas. It's impacting family vacations. That is something that the president's political team does not want to be talking about right now.
Yeah, especially as they know that they have to grapple with an ongoing affordability crisis. It shows up in poll after poll that this is the focus for the American public. And so I guess the question is, when your sources talk to you about this being a hot piece, do they anticipate that being the status quo, the state of play through the midterms? Or is this a White House that wants to get back to the negotiating table under that memorandum of understanding? I guess the real question is, how much longer do they expect to be in this?
Yeah, it's a little hard. It's one of these kind of issues where the president is saying, kind of this big message, and then the people who are working beneath him are trying to kind of put this into reality a bit. We heard President Trump just a few hours ago talking about how they were going to be the guardians of the Strait of Hormuz, this key shipping lane, which is important to the world, but many people at home weren't aware of it before this war started at the end of February. Now it's kind of, we're all watching these tankers go through, seeing if it's going to impact our gas prices. And when he says guardian of the Strait of Hormuz, that is just a big change of rhetoric from when President Trump is talking about the way he sees the United States not being the world's policeman that he's been talking about for the past decade. So that has to bring the questions about of how long the president thinks he wants to be involved directly so closely in the Middle East.
Well, especially because a few months ago, we at MS Now had reporting that he was getting bored with this war. There was also, in here, you talk about, is this the role of the U.S. on the world stage for a president that had a pretty non-interventionist agenda? It takes us back to the early days of this war, 108 days ago by your count, that the MAGA alliance was fractured over whether or not the U.S. should even be starting a conflict in Iran. And I think that is now reigniting, as tensions are flaring, reigniting that debate as well. There's also another key piece of news coming out of the White House that I want to get you on, because President Trump is set to give a primetime address to the nation later this week. He wrote on social media that the address is going to take place Thursday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. MS Now has learned it will focus on newly declassified intelligence reports that this White House claims reveal plans by foreign nations to interfere in the 2020 election. That is according to two White House officials speaking on condition of anonymity. One of those officials saying the president will be joined at the address by the CIA director, the acting director of national intelligence, the FBI director, the secretary of Homeland Security. And I think it's really important when we talk about this to note, to date, there has been no credible evidence of widespread voter fraud in the 2020 election, which, of course, is the election that Trump lost. And he just cannot let this go. But when you start putting the heads of the CIA, the director of national intelligence, who has no actual intelligence experience and yet is still serving in that role, what does it tell you when you see these high-ranking officials now potentially lending credence to debunked yet persistent conspiracy theories?
At Reuters, we're reporting that the topic of the speech will be something similar as well. But with that being said, the president is talking about the 2020 election almost every day this year. So whatever new thing comes out on Thursday, he's probably said it within the past few weeks to months because he's relitigating this election. And we don't know exactly what he's going to say it on Thursday, but I think it's just a good reminder that even though we hear about, this was the 2020 election that Joe Biden won, at the time of the election, who was running government at that time? It was President Trump and some of these current administration officials that we have right now, but in the first term. So that is just something that keep in the back of the mind when you hear allegations of maybe career officials maybe not standing up to foreign governments, or maybe not ringing the alarm loud enough. So I guess what I'm saying here is just watch with maybe a skeptical eye on Thursday.
Definitely.
A lot has gone on to the foreign interference and influence of elections. Every election, we're sitting with intelligence agencies, hearing that this country is trying to influence the election. That's not new. We've heard about that in 2020.
Yeah.
And Republicans in states like Georgia and key battleground states certified those election results in 2020 as well.
Certified them, and you're right that it's not new that countries try to influence U.S. elections, but none have successfully done so in a meaningful way so as to change what the actual results are. And so I think a skeptical eye is essential as we watch what this administration puts out and as they try to continue to sow discord in the American public's faith in our election systems. White House reporter for Reuters, Bo Erickson, we're going to have a busy week on your beat. Thank you for coming on.